evening, and thanks for joining us. We have the great pleasure tonight to have Dr. David Arnold with us, and he is not only a local dentist, but he also guest lecturer at UCLA, and I think hopefully it's a nice thing we catch up on state of what COVID has done to the dental industry, some other stuff, some changes, and just I think it should be an informative half hour. And thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Now, to start off with, the elephant in the room we were talking about with the COVID is, how has it been? I mean, in dentistry to actually, I know you're back open and running now again, but how's the process been?
Well, it's been challenging.
Yeah.
When this whole thing started and we had the shutdown,
yeah.
It affected everybody and everybody's business, including our own. And even though we were still, you had potential emergency situations, we were not allowed into our offices. And the guidelines came from everywhere. They
right.
came from the Dental Society, from the state board, from the Hygienists Association, from our local health department, from the CDC. It's just a laundry list of organizations, all just putting guidelines into place.
Sure.
But we were shut down for over 2 months.
Wow.
And for any business person, just pull the plug for 2.5 months and see what that does to your operation.
Well, and the other one is not even mentioned, but I think we've heard this from other industries that some of the stuff, it ends up being driven by liability insurance and stuff. At the end of some of that stuff, because that ends up being a determining factor if insurance pulls the plug on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then there's abandonment issues.
Right.
Patient-doctor
right.
abandonment things. That was my biggest concern was, you guys aren't letting us in there.
People are mid-procedure type of...
Right. And people that I can call in a prescription for an antibiotic or something from a distance, but in my mind I was abandoning my patients, and I was not comfortable at all with that.
Yeah.
But it was what and I've got a wife that's on chemotherapy for multiple myeloma, which she's been treated for going on 5 years now, but high risk. So I was particularly sensitive about, what do I do?
Right.
Do I go back to work?
Right.
Is it worth it?
Right.
I had all of those questions.
Yeah.
But it was, at the end of the day, I like what I do, and I feel like I'm an asset to my patients' health and their lives. So, so when we were given the opportunity to go back, we pulled out the guidelines and tried to sort it out and find out which seemed to be the most appropriate. And it really came down to my family. Is that what do I need to do to protect them?
Mm-hmm.
And if I answer that question comfortably for myself, I know I'm also taking care of my staff and my patients.
Yeah.
And everybody. But it really, that was my guideline, is I wanted to just make sure I wasn't taking something home.
To try to put a little bit of a positive spin on it.
Yeah.
I know. But your thing is ongoing. We were talking before the camera started, is some of these things will be some of the new normal type of stuff. Do you think there will be some positive benefit as far as process-wise and everything in some of the dental offices?
Oh, yes. I think the overall result is going to be a really positive thing.
Okay.
You walk into one of my rooms and it outlines our sterilization procedures. I want people to see what we do to protect them.
Yeah.
And we haven't had to change that. We're on top of things as far as just being clean and our sterilization processes and packaging and all of that sort of thing. What's different is as the patient walks in the front door.
Right.
And our own personal protection equipment, the PPEs. Those are the changes, but I think in the overall scheme of things, it's brought just cleanliness, sterilization, and just proper procedures to light.
Right.
And I think that there maybe is that practice, whether it's medicine or dentistry, where maybe they're not paying as close attention, but they're going to. And I think that's a really positive.
The last time the medical industry had something like this was HIV stuff when they were doing, because everybody had to ramp up, ramp
I
up.
got a good story about that.
But am I right? I mean,
Absolutely.
Because then you had all the similar. I mean,
yeah. I've told this story to my patients, but when I came out of school in the mid '70s, I came out of Southern California. I did my bachelor's degree is in marine biology, so I used to surf a lot.
Yeah.
And
so Arnold's a natural choice.
Yeah, right on the beach.
Yeah.
So my first practice was in Walnut Creek, and I used to go to work in flip-flop shorts and a Hawaiian shirt, and that's how I went to work. That's how I worked.
Right.
I was in a building with a bunch of white coat and tie kind of guys, and I thought, I'm going to throw a twist on it, and people responded beautifully. I mean, it's just, I got busy because people were like me. They wanted to be casual and comfortable in their own skin. And then, dentistry I take very seriously.
Sure.
I've never taken myself very seriously. So, but then HIV came along, and that was in the late 70s, early 80s. And I almost quit. I mean, I was ready to leave dentistry. I mean, we knew two things. Well, three maybe. It was bloodborne, possibly put it into saliva, and you died.
Right.
That was it. That's all we knew.
So for dentistry, that's like...
It's like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah,
this is crazy, So, but I was able to get into just an educational day at San Francisco General Hospital. I was, like I said, Walnut Creek, so I spent a day in San Francisco and learned a lot about it, and learned that if I'm protecting myself from just most any kind of hepatitis or whatever, I'm safe from HIV. Right. HIV is a very difficult organism to keep alive. Right. Yeah, I mean, if it's you'll never see it on a countertop or anything like that because they can't keep it alive long enough to even study it. So, so I felt okay. I mean, we were like freaking out, double gloves and double this and double that. And I don't want to die. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it felt like back then. But that made a major change in the way things were done. Right. And to your point, and that was a good thing. I mean, it was nothing. I mean, HIV is HIV, but what came out of it was that people took more care in sterilization and in cross-contamination and bloodborne pathogens and things like that. That made a big difference. And this reminds me of that in a lot of ways. That I think what's going to come out of it is a positive change for the safety and just protective nature of the patient. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I really think so.
State of the industry, what do you think, is there going to be some attrition to some offices? Do you think the industry will pull through fairly well?
Yeah, I was just looking at some statistics and some journals on that very subject, and I mean, the dentistry in general is very encouraged that we're doing okay. Good. We're doing okay. Good. I mean, again, I was mentioning beforehand that, a good 32%, I think, was the statistic in this one, that the industry has dropped. The average practice productivity has gone down there that much because we see things linearly now. I mean, you think of a dentist going from room to room and you get this guy numb, and then you go and do something over here, and then you check this, do an exam, and then back over to here. That's a three-dimensional kind of scheduling system. Now it's linear. Because you have to stay one to one to one to one, rather than sort of like the three-dimensional structure like I see it. And
which
so
changes your cost,
slowed down productivity. Absolutely. So production has gone down, and costs have gone up, and because it's not cheap to have the disposable, the gowns and and even if you at the beginning we couldn't even get them. I mean, that was another problem, was just trying to access these things. To have the California Dental Association had a semi full of masks, gloves, gowns, and they were stashed. They'd gotten a hold of these things for the members, and they were going to stash them at this warehouse in Reno. And they pulled this truck into this warehouse, and right behind them was a truck from the state of California Health Department, and just hooked it up and took it. Wow. So it's very interesting to see how that all happened, and just having available, not just that we needed it, but could we get it?
Yes.
And that was a challenge. That was really a
Now,
challenge.
one thing that's a little interesting in is because you guys are frontline health workers, you will probably be at the front of the line for some of the vaccines,
I
right?
just read that in the ADA has been pounding that for a while now,
Right.
Putting us at that leading edge of healthcare workers, and whether we can give the vaccine. I just read that today too. Would we be able to administer the vaccine when it's available?
Now, a question I don't. With the first round of vaccines, I mean, the efficacy looks just off the charts. I mean, Pfizer's went up to 95 today.
That kind of happened overnight.
Yeah. But is there any concern with, since this is kind of an RNA messaging, it's a different beast.
Oh, yeah.
It's a different beast.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think you're going to see pushback from people on a little bit of the unknown on it a little bit as far as long, or do you think it's...
Oh, no, I think there's definitely going to be some pushback on it.
Okay.
I mean, viruses in general, I mean, if you understand what a virus does, it comes along, I always visualized it as a kind of a lunar lander sort of thing that comes along and attaches to a cell, and then it injects its RNA into the cell, tells the DNA in the cell to start making viruses.
Right.
And so it takes over the productivity of the cell.
Right.
Well, then you try and get something that's going to protect us from that process. But it's a constantly mutating, constantly dynamic kind of thing that's going on.
Right.
And so, vaccines in general, I mean, there's belief systems that they can cause problems in and amongst themselves. So
much less
I think there's going to be some real give and take on this thing. It's going to be an ebb and flow thing.
Well, I guess a question, and this ties into some of the actual technology side of it then, isn't this the pathway to really start going after even some of the cancers, some of the other stuff? I mean, is these viruses, I mean, the carrier mechanism, isn't that kind of use it as a mechanism to spread the messaging that they want?
It all comes down to stem cells. Okay, I mean, if you really get into this, because my wife had a bone marrow transplant, which is all stem cell stuff.
Right.
And it's basically, how do you tell those cells, how do you flip those switches, how do you get it to understand it? Example, orthodontics. You take a tooth and you push it, and one side the membrane gets squished, and the other side the membrane gets stretched. Well, the same cell on either side, this one turns into mechanisms that take away bone. The same cell over here turns into one that makes bone. Exactly the same cell to begin with. They're basically identical. They have all the DNA information, but those are stem cells. How do you throw that switch?
Right.
What is that mechanism? Now, in multiple myeloma, leukemia, lymphomas, they're using the T cells in your white blood cell system. And so T cells are the ones that, if you've got a sliver in your finger, the T cells are the guys that come along and say, hey, there's a sliver in the finger, bring in all the inflammatory stuff, let's kill this thing. So they're the guys that recognize the problem and then turn the body against it. Well, what they're trying to do is genetically engineer T cells to see cancer as the enemy,
the sliver,
because the cancer turns them off. It literally turns the T cell off, and so you can't. The immune system doesn't know what to fight, and yet if we can genetically and guess what a virus does? Genetically re-engineers the cell.
Right. That's why I asked the question, because it's all that same.
But it's all the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Right. It's all in that same realm where if we can genetically tell these T cells, turn them back on again, and go, hey, this guy here, this multiple myeloma protein, is the enemy, then it'll keep fighting that enemy until it's gone. And because right now there's no cure, and yet there could be if we can do that.
But aren't
they're in trials now?
Yeah,
they're in trials.
The only reason I thought I saw a journal somewhere that says, aren't they using some kind of the virus is kind of the carrier vehicle for some of these?
That's just what. They're trying to learn from the virus how to genetically re-engineer the cells. Right. And the virus already knows how to do it.
Well, I guess into the halo, the halo effect of this then, with all of the money and all the concentration then, it seems like from just a knowledge perspective, is COVID may actually pay benefits
Oh, I have to
Hasn't
think so.
Hasn't it driven the...
I have to think so.
Yeah.
I mean, on a lot of levels, all the
Right.
levels we're talking about,
Right.
from the science and the DNA engineering of cells to how we prepare our offices for our patients,
Right.
how we clean that chair and those
Right.
counters and that floor
Right.
and the instruments and all of the above. I can't help but that we're going to take away from all of this some positive stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's so sad, the number of fatalities
it's
and
real,
all the
it's
people that
horrific.
have suffered
Yes.
through this
Yes.
thing. But if something like this does happen, you got to try and find something that's going to help others, and I think that's going to happen. I don't have any question in my mind that it won't.
Yeah. And I guess the other one, you may have seen this one today. I thought I saw one today that was on the cleanliness. It kind of tangentially ties into that, is on viral loads. You know, the people who had a big dose. You know, the fatality rates for ones that had a really heavy viral load versus ones that had, you know, the smattering, so to speak.
Yeah. But those are, you know, how do you manage stuff like that?
Right.
I mean, how do you even measure it? I mean, those are big questions. I mean, and is that significant?
Right.
Is you having more of this virus in your body, does that make that a difference as far as your symptoms are concerned? Or is it that if you have certain loads at this age or this health dynamic, is that a factor? Mm-hmm. I mean, the mental challenges, you know, intellectually, it drives me crazy because I love to do intellectual stuff.
Yeah, but you can kind of get yourself into a ball.
But you
and
can
just
really get wound up into it. Yes, oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And but I can't help but think that positive stuff is coming out. I know in my world it will.
Yeah.
And I think dental offices are going to provide a better setting for people, a safer setting. The article I was referring to that I was reading this morning was talking about that dental offices are going to start looking more and more like hospitals.
Right.
And
yes.
you know, and I only have one room with a door on it. I mean, and I've got to think about that. I've got to think about whether or not, because I've just got openings on both sides. You come in behind the chair, and you know, it's the computer and everything is in between there. But these are open doors. There's no doorway. The reason I have a room with a door on is so little kids.
Right. Noise more than anything else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that it's going to change things. It's going to change just the profession in a lot of ways, but mostly in relationship to the care that's taken to provide a safe environment.
Like you would even, I thought you'd mentioned about, I mean, as far as air handling and stuff like that, you've changed, I mean, as far as,
we're looking at
air handling changes.
Yes,
as
we're
far
looking
as
at different air purifiers, but hospital level stuff. I mean, this isn't the Dyson thing that you've got next to your fireplace, you know, to circulate the air with a little HEPA filter in it. No, these are big, like
UV,
commercial air purifying systems.
Yeah.
And
which have costs.
Oh yeah, those babies are really expensive.
Yeah.
And everything has cost, but then it's like at the same hand, I try and keep my fees down. I don't want to just automatically take all my fees up to pay for this. So then it's like, well, what's the right thing to do? Would be is maybe have a surcharge per appointment that, you know, $20 or $25 or something. Although they estimate that it's close to $50 now per patient per room.
PPE for staff, PPE for the provider.
Just to turn over a room is about $50 before all of this.
Wow.
I mean, just to go in and clean the room, get the instruments out, you know, set it up for the next patient, that sort of thing. But now you take the gowns that we were using the disposable ones, you know, just get bags of these things. And so I sent one of the disposable ones to my sister and said, hey, can you make one of these that I could launder? Because we launder in the office. I mean, I have a washer and dryer there.
Yeah.
So when I go to work, I just wear whatever, and then my scrubs and my gowns and stuff are all laundered at the office. But she made up a bunch of these for me.
Which is great.
And you change it, because you go out and buy this stuff, and it starts adding up pretty quickly.
But not only that, it's the waste trail everywhere.
Oh,
I mean, the amount.
That was my biggest complaint. Was we had bags of stuff because you're anything that you create aerosol, you got to change again, you know, and so you're just bags and bags of this disposable stuff. You know, it's like, it just, that's when then I looked at buying the laundering stuff, laundering services, and you go, I call my sister Kathy, hey, could you make some of these things for me? Which she did.
Sure.
She researched out the right material,
Yep.
and so she sent up a whole bunch of these things, and that's what we wear.
Question, let's switch gears just a little bit.
Sure.
As far as dentistry as a profession and the science of it, I know there's been a lot of big changes on, rolling out implant stuff, all the other stuff. I mean, where do you see the future? Yeah, where do you see the future?
The buzzword in dentistry is airway.
Which is
my bag anyway. Yeah. I mean, I've been lecturing on airway and like nasal versus oral respiration, whether you breathe through your mouth or your nose as a little kid. I've been lecturing on that since the 80s.
Right.
Because my daughter, I saw some things happening that I didn't understand. And went into the ear, nose, and throat literature and found things called adenoid faces, but all having to do with the changes in muscular activity and what that does to growth and development. But now the whole profession's getting into it because of sleep.
Got it.
Yeah, and now dentistry is kind of getting married to medicine in this sleep world, because the airway is extremely dependent on the position of the tongue and the jaw. I mean, the first thing you learn in CPR, tip the head back, bring the jaw forward. Bringing the jaw forward brings the tongue forward because it's attached right there, and that helps open the airway.
Up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So why does a 5-year or 6-year-old grind their teeth off, at nighttime? I mean, literally grind them off. They're not married, don't have a job, so it's like, you tell me. Well, so the answer comes from their needing to have a better airway. They've got some kind of obstruction, whether it's their tonsils, adenoids, whether it's just their jaw position, small jaw, big tongue, whatever it is, but there's an obstruction. We swallow about 1,200 times every 24 hours. So when we sleep, you maybe swallow 300 or 400 times. Every time you swallow, these muscles go like that, meaning you're touching your back teeth. So you're going to your bite position like 300 times, say, when you're sleeping. Well, if you've got any kind of obstruction, adult or child, doesn't matter, and your jaw is back there, what nature does is start bringing it forward. Starts bringing it forward to keep that airway open so your sleep architecture
Which triggers a wake reflex.
Right, but then you swallow.
Right.
And you go back to your old bite. And then it starts wandering forward again, swallow. And so teeth are in the way. So guess what gets ground off? Are the teeth. And the research is just, the literature's thick with this stuff now.
Right.
With the whole idea that that's what's going on at night. We're grinding our teeth at night so we breathe better, we sleep better. And the daytime stuff, that's work and wives and kids and all the rest of it, life.
Sure.
But the academy that I've been president of and on the board and all of this, they've actually changed the name to add airway into the name of the academy.
Oh, very nice.
So it's really getting a lot of attention, and dentistry is picking it up coming in the back door in reference to sleep and sleep disorders.
Right.
Because we're making appliances now to hold the jaw forward.
Sure.
And now that are FDA approved for mild to moderate sleep apnea. So sleep disordered breathing, sleep apnea, even just snoring is an obstruction of airflow. And that's pathologic.
Yeah.
You lower oxygen saturation, you're putting stress on the heart. And you're increasing inflammatory conditions throughout the system. So now you've got risk for diabetes, arthritis. I mean, the list goes on. And all of these things are connected.
But the other halo of time is like for the young guys, guys and girls that are coming out of school, it expands the scope of what a practice can be.
Oh,
right?
my gosh.
It expands
dramatically,
bit, right?
Dramatically.
Okay.
Yeah. It's hard for me to, even as I speak to residents, these guys are doctors, they've been through dental school, they've gone through this, and they're just opening their eyes to this stuff. I kind of assume people know this, but they don't. And you just don't have time.
Right.
You don't have time at dental school to learn this stuff. You get a little wisp of things, but you're learning the technical stuff and diagnoses and all as it's related to more traditional kind of dental stuff. But dentistry is going off into areas now that I think this is where it needs to go. They're going to be doing fillings on your tooth with robotic stuff.
Right.
They're taking prostates out with it now.
Right.
So it's going to go there. It has to.
Mm-hmm.
But the quality of life, reducing inflammation in the body, that's where it's got to go, because that's where overall health lies.
Right.
And we're healthcare people. We're not technicians. I've never thought of myself as a technician.
Yeah, but I think that also has some really nice things for those going into the practice, because it's not just grind, fill. It's not just grind, fill, and move on.
Drill and fill.
Yeah, I mean it's.
Yeah, no, it really is true, and I see it as just more that we can offer that I think has been kind of between the professions. The whole idea of sleep and sleep architecture, and understanding what we have, that our liver has to make sugars for our brain while we're sleeping. Right. Our short-term and long-term memories have to be sorted out.
Yeah.
And these are all things that happen during these sleep cycles that we go through. And if we have fragmented sleep, you're not gonna get through that. You're not gonna get through it as well.
Yeah.
And we'll pay the consequences for it.
We're coming up on a couple minutes in, and the last one thing I think is especially with rural practices, the changes in demographics for rural America is all of a sudden popular again.
Yeah.
And,
just look at the highway. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think in some ways is it making practices in rural areas, potentially more increasingly viable and stuff. Because the permanent residents of Arnold it's huge. It's
even the residents who are they're going into specialties, but some of these guys are trying to combine pediatrics and ortho, and they just can't figure out how I've done everything I've done in a one-guy practice up in a little town.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Yeah.
But you have to be motivated to do it.
Yes.
And the guys coming out of school are usually in pretty thick debts, and so they end up
they're motivated
going to the. But they're starting in the cities. But now they're beginning to realize that there's these opportunities that are.
Yeah.
That are. I wouldn't make money. The money I make up here isn't what I would have made if I stayed in Walnut Creek. I would have made a lot more money down there. But who cares?
Yeah.
I get to live here.
Yeah.
And I think that's beginning to be realized, and that we can, as dentists, take more of a handle on a person's overall condition rather than just fixing a hole in the tooth.
Right.
Yeah, that to me that's the biggest thing where we're going.
Thanks for what you do, and I think it's always been impressed me is that you've with your academic affiliations and everything else to maintain the level of your craft and from in a rural setting. It's always been very impressive to me.
Oh,
no,
thanks.
it really has. I think it's and I think it pretty cool thing.
Well, I love living here and working here.
Yeah.
I'm a very fortunate guy. I'm just lucky. I all the way through and through be able to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've really enjoyed this discussion. Yeah, it's been.
And glad you made it through it's because it was 8 months ago it was like, okay, this is gonna work.
Yeah, but this has been fun.
Thanks for the time you spent with us.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.